Good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to the Writer's Room. I am your host, Kat Rocha, the night editor, and my co-host is...
It is I, J. Ishiro Finney, author and alien in a human suit, and tonight joining us is Kat.
Tonight we have our very special guest, Declan Finn, author of Hellspawn and the upcoming White Ops. Hello, Declan.
Hello.
And how are you this evening?
I'm doing fairly well for being, stuck in New York City.
Oh.
So far we've primarily had pulp writers on who've done space opera, so this is kind of a change of pace. Now, Declan's White Ops does fall into the space opera category, and as we get a few more people joining us tonight, I think we should cover that because I think quite a few of you will be interested. But his main series is Hellspawn, or it's the that's the title of the first one, right?
That's the title of the first one. The series is called St. Tommy, NYPD.
And it's kind of a occult horror or urban horror, occult noir,
urban fantasy, action horror, depending on how you want to look at it. It's basically, how I put this, if you hate Christian fiction, you'll like this one. Sorry, it's been a kind of a running gag in my circles. No, it follows a very simple premise. One I actually picked up in college. I went to a Catholic university, and one class talked about. Thank you, Horizon Talker. One of the classes had. Yeah, well, you had some saints with charisms. They could levitate. They could smell evil. And around smell evil, my first thought was, wouldn't that be great for a cop? And, once you get through levitation, bilocation, you just sort of slap a superhero cape on them and call it a day. And that's when I came up with the idea for St. Tommy NYPD. That was 20 years ago. And when I bounced the idea past my publisher, Silver Empire, they said, "Ooh, I like that one. Let's go with it."
Well, that's kind of right in line with the stuff they publish anyway. I mean, as we were talking backstage, it falls right into the same genre as Russell Newquist's series, War Demons. So if any of you have read that, that definitely, this is a book to check out. And although I wouldn't say that my books are Catholic by any means, if you like Case File Arkham, there's definitely some real crossover here. Definitely some real crossover.
Hold on, I have to add another book to my to-be-read file.
Oh, thank you.
What was the book again? Arkham?
Case File Arkham, yes.
Case File Arkham. Sorry, I also run a book review website, so...
Oh,
like
we could send them copies or files.
Let's talk later.
Yeah, later.
Yeah, that's backstage talk. So, I would say the first thing that really struck me is, reading the first few chapters. Right away, you know who this character is. It's first-person perspective, and honestly, we were like, okay, is this guy in law enforcement or does he know someone in law enforcement? Because it was really honest, and we've known cops, so.
I do a lot of research, and I have read books by cops. I literally live within 5 blocks of my nearest police precinct. And I've been researching the field on and off for, how long have I been writing? About 25 years. And so this is when I was a teenager, and down to I even had a fascination with serial killers for 5 minutes before I found out, yes, they all have mommy or daddy issues. They're all kind of boring. But so I used a lot of that research. I don't know how far into Hellspawn you were in.
Not far enough, unfortunately.
Okay. Well,
I know that you can smell evil in possession.
Yes. I'll give you the basic premise, and it's not going to be much of a spoiler. It's by chapter 5 or 6 you figure this out, where I think it's even on the back of the book, where it's basically, yes, we've got the cop with the powers of a saint versus a possessed serial killer. And it's like, yeah, this is perfect for book one.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely works. Now, with Russell Newquist's book, and I've got to bring the comparison just to find out, one of the things I kind of pushed him on, I said, you title this Catholic fiction, but frankly, it just seemed like urban horror with a Catholic character that didn't really strike me as anything particularly what you would assume Catholic fiction to be.
Mm-hmm.
Your book seemed, at least in the first few chapters, the same way. It's kind of interesting. Is it more of a sales point than rather?
It's partially a sales point, and it's partially a warning.
Okay.
Because we've had some complaints pop up so often from people who are deathly allergic to anything that looks positive on religion at all. That I had to come up with warning labels for the books. I'm not even exaggerating. Some they even
I want to hear that story next. Okay.
Okay. Well, there will be spoilers in that case, but no, a lot of what I wound up using was, I'm Catholic, and it's like I'm weird. I have degrees in history and philosophy, and would you like fries with that? And so I have this tendency to weaponize Catholic metaphysics and philosophy, and I throw them into the book. And in this case, I'm using the body of Catholic faith as the basic mythology. So as we go along, you'll get bits and pieces. I do not want to shove it in anybody's face. Not faith. That's a different conversation. But I'm not shoving anything in anyone's face. The closest I get is a chapter, and I'm not even shoving my opinions in. It's like, let's just say the dark side gets a lot of airtime, and there are 1-star reviews who are all very angry about it. And it's like, dude, I'm quoting people you should like. You should be agreeing with the bad guy. I know you don't like that, but I wasn't even that harsh about it, because it's like, yes, all of these malicious lines are coming out of the mouth of a politician, and as we all know, all politicians are evil. So, what's the newsflash?
Well, I don't know. It's just the logic of needing to add a warning is kind of like claiming that The Exorcist is somehow a Catholic film. It's Catholic mythology, but it isn't. I don't know. It's just a film.
Oh yeah. Well, with The Exorcist, I actually prefer the book, mainly because William Peter Blatty, was from Georgetown back when it was Catholic. I know they were, back when the Jesuits were Catholic. How's that? And, it went into details, especially here are all of the hundreds of tests you have to go through before you can get an exorcism. It was almost a police procedural for the supernatural.
Oh, you've read it?
I haven't read that, but I actually looked up the procedural of what the Catholic Church has to go through in order to decide if anything is a holy event or if it's something definitely of this planet.
That's fascinating.
Oh yeah, it's basically, you take one part Italian bureaucracy, which trust me is terrible. One part a bureaucracy of, well, we think in centuries around here, and then you go into trying to, oh yes, we have to exclude everything that possession cannot be. It has to be a medical impossibility, and that's what you have to go through in order to get an exorcism. I actually wound up reading 2.5 books on possession, exorcism, demonic infestation, and a lot of it wound up in the book later on. It's not even halfway through the book before it starts popping up. And, you know, fun tidbits like, oh, yeah, about half the bishops don't believe in possession or Satan. And yeah, they haven't actually put forward exorcists like they're supposed to. You know, there are 140, 160 some odd dioceses in America. Every diocese is supposed to have its own exorcist, and there are 70 across the country. You know, things like that. And some places, such as Europe, where, yeah, things that are demonic in nature and require exorcism is actually going through the roof. This should be concerning. Things like that.
Interesting. And I take it those elements do show up in your story, right?
Oh, yeah. The book is, I'm currently, book 9 is the next one to come out. And basically, every bit of research I've ever come up with gets thrown in, including some things that I had to make up myself. And I'm very clear about what's, you know, this is not Catholic teaching. This is Catholic teaching. This is an actual myth. This is something I stole from Elder Scrolls. You know, things like that.
So then, okay, and the first one he faces a demon. Does other sorts of things pop up? Like, I don't know, do we get vampires or werewolves or something different entirely?
Vampires come up. Werewolves do come up. After a while, I started looking into Eastern European mythology to come up with more monsters because I was throwing the kitchen sink in. You know, so yes, it will come up. The book ends up being 12 books long. I know because
nice.
I know because I finished book 12 and I'm still kind of editing it. So yeah, everything has to come up sooner or later. And to your point of, well, it's not necessarily Catholic. Well, one, I guess it depends on your definition of what makes it a Catholic book, and I'll get into that. And the other thing is, there are some of my bigger fans are Protestants, who are going, yeah, I can. He's, you know, I'm using, Declan Finn is using Catholic prayers and Catholic teaching, but frankly, I don't see anything different from what my pastor said at church last week. So I don't care. I'll take the win.
Well, I think the reason it kind of clashes in my mind is, as a child of the 80s and 90s, you hear Catholic novel and you think Christian rock.
Oh,
you see what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. That's what I like to call the problem of Christian fiction. And good God, Christian fiction, as a rule, sucks because they are more lifeless, they are lifeless, bloodless Hallmark movies. And, don't get me wrong, I actually do enjoy some Hallmark movies. They got some good actors, and there are some people who can actually write worth a damn. Who knew? But you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
Where it's, there is no conflict, there is no threat, and everybody is a cardboard saint. Their worst problem is, oh, what will X or Y person think of me? Like, I don't care. Can we move on now? So that is, and I've read some of those. I used to be part of something called the Catholic Writers Guild. So yes, I have read books like that, but there are also books that, yes, they are Catholic. Yes, they are written by Catholics, but it's like, yes, this is a murder mystery, and it makes sense. Who knew? Or, gee, one of my favorite writers and a friend of mine, Anne Margaret Lewis, decided to take the concept of Nephilim, which are usually understood as half angel, half human, and turn them into space aliens.
Nice.
So, heck, uh, I used Catholic theology once for vampires, where Thomas Aquinas had talked about, well, we see it, when we see the resurrected body of Christ, he can, you know, Jesus was literally noted for walking through walls at post resurrection. So Aquinas figured that, well, his soul was so tight and connected with his body that he could manipulate the molecules to slip through the molecules in a wall. I took that and I said, all right, so if you could do that, why not turn into mist or a bat? And that means a vampire is an imperfect resurrection, right? Uh, and I took that and just went with it.
Well, that definitely works with Stoker.
Mm-hmm.
That
Oh, yeah.
falls in line.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, when I was writing vampires, my first duty was I want my damn Dracula back.
Thank you.
I wanted vampires to be burned by crosses and sunlight and holy water. At one point, I even had a vampire use a blessed host of the Eucharist as a suicide pill.
Oh, that's clever.
That is clever.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to do something because I don't think I'll ever get around to using this idea. I had a twisted idea where, oh wait, you're laughing. Do you know where I'm going with this?
Yes, go ahead.
I always wanted to see a story where disgraced pedophile priests were being hired out by vampires to make unholy water for them. As essentially a tonic or cure to sunlight. I'm never going to use this.
Hold on.
Tell me if you ever use that.
Oh, I'm doing a sequel series to my vampire novels, so it'll probably get used.
Nice.
Okay,
I need good vampire fiction, honestly. I'm not too happy with a lot of what's on the shelf right now.
You don't like them sexy?
I've had to turn back to the 1800s to find some good stuff,
Carmilla?
Carmilla, Vampire, all of that. Let's see. Yang, where do you recommend some start if they want to start reading your work?
Well, that really depends on what you're interested in reading. Vampires, there is my Love at First Bite series. Book 1 is Honor at Stake. It's yeah, I know, I'm subtle. Well, it's followed by Demons Are Forever and Live and Let Bite. So,
I love it.
So, and they're kind of my answer to both the current sparkly vampires and B, my all vampire romance, where my problem is you're not hooking up in the first 24 hours you meet each other. So I solved that problem. That was Honor Stake had been published 1, 2, 3 times, 2 publishing companies and 1 self-published. The first publishing company actually liked the tagline, "Welcome to New York City, where vampires do not sparkle, they burn."
Nice.
If you're more interested in something more action-packed in terms of fantasy, definitely Hellspawn. There is a tiny bit, like I said, there's a tiny bit of politics in there. You can skim it, because even my original outline, it's like, you know what? I'm bored. Butcher knife. So, yeah, I don't like being preached at. I try not to preach at the audience.
Well, my take on that sort of thing, and it's why it's something Hollywood has completely lost sight of, is in the past, Hollywood could be very left-leaning or liberal, but as long as they spoke to actual universal morals and values that we all agreed on in Western culture, it really didn't matter what your politics were. We all agreed family was good. We all agreed that life was sacred. We all agreed.
As Kung Pao said, killing his bedong.
Yeah, we've lost that.
Yeah, don't get me. Well, if you want to get me started, I can go for the next 5 to 10 minutes or
Sure.
hours.
Go ahead for it. I think people would like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, before I do that, for the person who asked the last question about where they start, if you want to do thrillers, I've got something called A Pius Man. It's my answer to Dan Brown. And if you like murder mysteries at science fiction conventions, start with It Was Only on Stun.
Nice.
Yeah. Uh, it's actually taken from a real life event where, a Klingon was chasing a Chinese tourist through the halls of the Pennsylvania hotel, screaming, "It was only on Stun! It was only on Stun!"
Wow.
Yeah, I can't make that one up. But no, as far as modern day Hollywood and media, I don't know where you want to market as far as, some people will say, well, don't read anything before X date. It's like, one, I can't really support that because I'm published after X date. And two, congratulations. If you really want to go throwback, go to the Project Gutenberg. There are a bunch of free books there. And they probably all match up with what you're talking about. But no, the current crop of media being thrust down our throats is so morally confused and deranged in some cases. They have no idea what they're doing. Take phase 4 of Marvel, and if you can get any coherence out of anybody's actions, you're a better person than I am. It's like, here, let's free this murderer to help us and not throw him back in prison when we're done. What? Or, gee, we're going to completely throw whole characters out the window because we need to set up this replacement character because the actress doesn't want to come back. But enough about Scarlett Johansson. Things like that. Shang-Chi, where it's like, dude, did you edit this script to I'm not sure the bad guy knows. I'm not sure the bad guy knows what he's doing. I'm not sure that our hero knows what he's doing. I'm not sure anybody has a clear idea of what's going on or why. It's like, yes, well, my evil plan was to bring my daughter and my son together. It's like, you could have sent them an invitation. You're the father, right? Things like that. Here, let's make up a completely new character because this Marvel character was supposed to be the son of Dr. Fu Manchu, but Dr. Fu Manchu is racist now, and we can't get the copyrights anymore. So we're going to make up someone completely different. It's like, did you run out of Asian Marvel villains? You had at least 6 that I can think of off the top of my head.
I'm just thinking of the Eternals where they made up 2 characters because, well, they didn't have enough of a diversity buffet.
Yeah, at this point, you kind of know that by phase 4, they're just hell, just look at the CVs of the people writing the scripts or directing the films. They've got no credits, none. And it is so disorienting where it's like, I'm sorry, you went from Jon Favreau, who, created an entire franchise out of whole cloth and one Sam Jackson cameo, to, you figure you can get whatever Tumblr writer you can get your hands on and it'll make $1 billion because you're Marvel? No, it doesn't work like that. So I can go on for a while on Marvel alone.
Well, okay. Well, this would provide a perfect place to shift gears a little bit. I was really, really hoping that our co-host Fiona would be with us for this part, but unfortunately, no. Speaking of morally bankrupt Hollywood destroying franchises, V5 and your answer to it. White Ops.
White Ops. the Hollywood pitch for White Ops would probably be along the lines of, what if Babylon 5 were written by Bayan authors?
Nice.
And what I mean by that is, yes, on the one hand, you have military genius on space station who is doing top-down grand strategy. Meanwhile, my primary focus is on the guys who get things done. In some cases, they get things done with nuclear weapons. And I mean, and I don't mean, as in Babylon 5, we'll throw out a nuke every once in a while just to remind you that there are such things as fusion bombs. I mean, in terms of, we've got missile warfare, we've got tactical, we've got strategic nukes, and I've got a team that is one part Knights Templar and, paladins, and one part spec ops. And, one of my taglines is, they will go into the darkness and they will bring the light, even if it's with a mushroom cloud. And, sure, I grew up with Babylon 5. There will be some similarities, not a lot, but, after a while, it's like, nope, any similarities between this and Babylon 5 are completely miraculous, especially once you get to book 3, Main Street, DOA.
No. It's DS9 that you're taking from.
Yeah, sure I am. No, I won't even touch that. Right. Star Trek is its own dumpster fire right now. Like, no. But no, and what I try to do with White Ops. No, Deus Vult is book 6 of St. Tommy NYPD. Seriously, that's the title.
Nice.
Yeah, I had fun with that one, especially with, the kaiju manifest demon that looked like Tiamat. Tiamat, the rainbow tastes you.
I want that on a shirt now. Please tell me you sell that as a shirt.
Hold on, let me make a note.
I think D&D players alone, at least old school D&D players, would all buy it and get it.
Well, that's why I want it.
Yeah, that line is not original to me. I don't think. I could have collected it somewhere, but yeah, don't worry. If that shirt does not exist now, it will soon.
It needs to exist.
Yeah, but so yes. Heck with White Ops, part of what I wound up doing is I have a character who was raised in a religious order. The religious order runs a Ren fair. And, oh, look, it's missionary order. So they go out, learn a whole bunch of, yep, that's the book. And
so there you go, Marv.
Yeah, that was fun. I like to just say that the bad guy in that one was, if H.P. Lovecraft designed a Bond villain.
Nice.
Yeah. But no, with White Ops, it's basically, I have somebody raised in a religious order. They run a lot of Ren fair, so they get a lot of military types, including from other cultures. So he winds up learning, he's one of those kids who, starts taking up martial arts at age 6, only it's like, yes, I'm going to start learning from every martial arts I can get my hands on, even those from off-world. So it's fun.
Very cool.
Yes. And I try to put in as much science as I can. Here's gravity wells, here's hyperspace. We have several types of mechs. I don't know if it survived the last edit, but a lot of them are named after what inspired them. So there's the Spartan 5 armor, the walking tanks that are called Heinleins, things like that.
You know what? It's okay. I kind of did the same thing with the story of mine. So
yeah, well, the amount of things that are named after their creators are legion. unless you're Nikola Tesla, in which case you're screwed. But that's a
Yeah.
different conversation. And, I wound up throwing a whole bunch of that into the book. And, yes, well, you don't go through officer command school unless you read, Heinlein and Ringo and some authors I made up just because it's 300-400 years in the future. And I've run it past a few scientists, and their response is, well, it didn't make me cringe, so that's a good start.
Hey,
Like,
that's always a good sign. We've done the same thing, and it's always great when they tell you, well, you're not totally full of shit.
yeah. Thankfully I don't have that problem with the urban fantasy. There are no priests who have told me, well, you got this wrong. It's like, well, I should hope not. I copied and pasted this from the U.S. Bishop's website. If they got it wrong, we're all in trouble.
So shifting gears again, since this is a show partially about getting people, well, what we want to do is get authors hooked up with audiences so that people know who you guys are, but also for aspiring authors. Let's talk about your technique. If you want to. If you don't want to, it's okay.
No. I've got two techniques. I have outline books. I have gone by the seat of my pants with books. Originally, my style of writing was design a character, full biography. I know what they did when they were 5. I knew what their parents and grandparents did. Then I'd wind up the toy and let them wreak havoc on the universe. In some cases, with the St. Tommy novels, those were largely outlined. Although, since I was new to outlining, Hellspawn wound up with a lot of making stuff up as I went along, because I basically went, I'm bored now. Gunfight. I'm bored now. Car bomb. Things like that. So the outline didn't quite work as intended. So I'm familiar with both elements. I have no problem with writing by the seat of your pants. Although that does run the risk of, well, this character wants to do this thing. This character wants to do that thing. This character came out of nowhere and is doing his own damn thing, which has come up more than once. I had a character hijack an entire novel. It's like,
oh, really?
Yeah, he wasn't even supposed to be in that book. Like, damn it, what are you doing here? Okay, fine. So yeah, it happens. Outlines help, especially if you're getting complicated. One of my earlier outlines was less an outline and more a matter of, I have to remember this has to happen, and this has to happen before that happens. Things like that. But yeah, okay. The majority of my writing has been a matter of, I have plot points in my head. I have characters fully developed before I write anything, even if they're just written in my head. And, I wind them up and sent them off. It's like, yeah, we know what points we have to hit along the way, connect the dots, have fun. And explosions and shootout happen fairly regularly. But, I won't say I bore easy, but there are days.
Well, getting to, again, St. Tommy NYPD, I just want to read a scene, one, because it read really honest to me, and it really immediately gave you a sense of character and setting and what kind of guy this is. So the audience knows this is near the beginning, and he's a cop walking his beat, and he grabs a kid who's just stolen a purse. Oh, you're already smiling. Okay. I smiled into his face. Hi, Anthony. Would you like to tell me to tell me your rights? We've done this dance too often. He merely smiled widely and shrugged evenly as I hauled him to his feet. You win some, you lose some. Still ain't gonna serve any jail time. Anthony was the poster boy for juvenile recidivism and a great example for anyone who agitates for prosecuting all criminals as adults. He wasn't necessarily a bad kid, but he could use an extended stay at Boys Town or an overnight at Rikers to scare him straight. It would help if you won any, I suggested. Can I cuff myself this time? He asked as I took his wrist behind his back and cuffed him. Guess not. I rolled my eyes. Anthony, have you considered if you wanted a job, or Anthony, if you ever considered if you wanted money, you get a real job? He laughed. You mean work for a living? Hey, that's racist, Joe. I shook my head and sighed. That sounds real.
Yeah, there are some lines from Anthony where it's like, yeah, I think I went to high school with this guy. But yeah, if it's not real, it should be.
Well, both of us had gone on police ride-alongs for research, and that's why I was like, does this guy know cops? Because it felt very, very honest.
Again, most of it's research. One of the thick books I read about cops, and it was by a cop named Eddie Conlon. It was called Blue Blood. They kind of stole his life for the TV show, and or at least elements. And just going through that and just how absurd some things are. Like, oh yeah, this meth head criminal informant panhandles, and most days, more often than not, he makes more money than we do. Things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and frankly, there are a lot of things that are just so stupid they have to be real. Just look at any collection of the Darwin Awards.
Yeah.
So a lot of that went into it, and you have to treat it with a straight face because some things are so insane they have to be real.
The ride-along I went on, one of the things the cop told me as we're driving around is, yeah, if you're pretty smart, you're probably going to get away with it. But if you're one of the dumb ones, we get all the dumb ones. Definitely. If you're dumb, we're going to get you.
Oh, yeah. There was actually a book by Candace DeLong. She was supposedly the inspiration for Clarice Starling from Silence of the Lambs. And she wrote a book, and a running theme was, aren't you glad they're stupid?
Yeah.
So,
the smart ones are scary.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. And the smart ones will get away with it. It's just a matter of, hopefully, these smart ones are just dumb enough to do it too often.
Arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, hey, if you're going to have one vice, you're probably going to collect the whole set.
Well, kind of like recently read about one of those professional imposters who trick rich people into buying shit for them. And he actually impersonated a Saudi prince for nearly 2 years successfully. But what finally did him in was he ordered pork at a dinner.
I'm sorry. Wow, that's a
Dumb.
special kind of stupid.
Yes. Yes, indeed. And instantly there was a call to the FBI. So.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Sorry. I also like con artist fiction. See leverage usually. And it's like, wow, that would be disappointing to any real life con artist who is even remotely successful. Anyway, next question.
Well, really, I would like to get back to characterization because I felt that just immediately that was the strong point of your writing from the onset is a lot of pulp. I'm going to be honest, that I've read, and yours isn't pulp, but a lot of the stuff we review and talk to authors about is pulp, is often it takes a little while to kind of get a sense of character. It's more, you get the setting first, or it's more about the action. I mean, yours right off the bat, I had a sense of who this guy was. And I think specifically it had to do with how he interacted with people and the way he talked to the reader. Where did that come from?
In part because I had a very specific voice I wanted for him. I actually took an actor from the TV show Blue Bloods because he had a very distinct way of speaking, and I ran it through a filter and added multiple elements. One of the reasons this is a first-person point of view is because there is no way on God's green earth that I can describe what this guy does without making him look like he's painted in pastels and viewed through rose-colored glasses. He can't be a jaded cop, because if you're jaded, you're not going to be a saint. You're more likely to start your pistol. You have to be somewhat generous to human nature on one end, and what's the line? As innocent as doves and wise as serpents. Sometimes he needs his partner to be for the wise as serpents category, but he tries, and it just came out to a unique perspective. And that was actually one of the hard parts with Hellspawn, was designing him in the first place, because in this case, I did the outline first. I didn't do a bio on him. I didn't create his entire family tree from scratch, and he was just, relatively fully formed, and I had to fill in backstory later. Originally, he was going to be a uniformed cop, and when Russell, the publisher, mentioned seeing him as a detective, he became about 6 years older. He wound up with a wife and a kid, and I don't know where they came from. And they were just sort of there. And he is a bit of a composite of a few saints. He has some personality attributes, because if you're going to be a good person, you have to at least like people. You have to be part of the community, even if it's just your parish community. Things like that, which mounds up with along the line where this will be a bit of a spoiler, but when somebody suggests to him that he might have some attributes of a saint, he's going like, "Oh, please, really? Well, you do work every. Well, you do stand. You do work with the soup kitchen. It's like, I have the free time. You do give the spare room to homeless people you meet. We've got the room." So he couldn't be a braggart, and it just wound up creating the character all by itself, really.
Interesting.
And he didn't diminish his accomplishments, but he just looks at it as common sense. Because if he looked at it as, yes, I'm so awesome for doing that, sin of pride, you're excluded, have a nice day. And he basically has to dismiss them as, yeah, anybody would do that in our situation. It's like, no, they wouldn't. And it's part of the fun. One of the running gags of the series is, trying to explain that, yes, he has these powers, he has these abilities as a gift from God. And, everyone he explains this to goes, yeah, I can see that. Why does everyone say that? I like torturing my characters sometimes. And
you kind of
that
have
means
to.
you're a good writer.
You kind of have to for the genre.
Mhm.
Yeah, pretty much. But and Tommy Nolan is unique for my characters, because before that I used a lot of characters who either A, enjoyed their job a little bit too much,
Mhm.
or people who may or may not qualify as full-on sociopaths.
Well, I think the interesting thing about Tommy is he's something that we haven't seen in a very, very long time, which is the archetype of the incorruptible cop the knight in shining armor. And that used to be an archetype that you would see quite a bit in fiction.
Oh, yeah.
And then the 60s happened.
Yeah, pretty much. You can still find some of it somewhere. Look up Joseph Wambaugh. He is a writer who used to be a police sergeant. So, he basically, his books are compiled stories he gets around the coffee maker. And he goes back to the 60s, and several of his things have been made into either TV shows or films. Yeah, and there were still some that went into the 70s, the original SWAT, for example.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
But good God, the last 20 years. Where do you even start?
I think everyone forgot that Dirty Harry was actually a very moral person.
Oh, yeah, he was very it was very black and white, and the problem is that there are some people who see grinding your heel into the bullet wound of a serial killer as maybe morally gray. Like, hi, have you seen what he's done?
Yeah.
Why are we kvetching about this? But I'm a little weird. But
You're in good company.
The other one is, I'd say, he reminded me, the interaction with the kid, and again, I keep coming back to this, is it so much reminded me of the way the Dare Cops acted back in elementary school and junior high.
Yeah. Well, it's got to, after a while, you have to have a certain rapport with the guy you've arrested 5 times. The attitude has either got to be, I'm just going to, take you out back and beat the crap out of you, or it's like, really? Again? Can't you find a crime you're good at? That sort of thing. I figure there's no real other option there.
Reminds me of my one visit to traffic court and the nightmare that was, where the judge almost knew everyone there by name.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, heck, my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, who I never met, was a Judge DeLeonardo, and he insisted to anyone who would listen that the writers had spies in his night court for the series Night Court, which just told you how utterly bizarre people you arrest at night are.
Wow.
That explains a lot.
Well, I knew they did actually base some of those, incidental cases on real things, because why not? Truth is stranger than fiction. So.
Oh, we got a great question here.
Wolf10 asks, what does Declan say about self-inserts?
Guilty. I have done that once, twice. Part of it is, well, I've done it, like I said, I've done it twice. Once, but in both cases, it's, this character is boring. I need to change him a lot. So they may start off with a lot of personality elements, but they have to go through a radical change. Otherwise, it's just going to be boring as hell. Just look at Larry Correa, his Monster Hunter International. His main character is essentially a self-insert. Gee, it's a gun-happy accountant who happens to be about 7 feet tall, who hooks up with a really hot brunette in librarian glasses, and oh, look, here's Larry Correa, accountant, gun-happy, 7 feet tall, hooked up with
Seriously?
Librarian. Yes,
he's
seriously.
that tall?
He's that tall.
Holy crap.
Dude, my stepdad's 6'10", so...
Yeah, there is a Japanese weapon called a Tetsubo, which is about...
that thing's huge.
Yeah, he uses it for a walking stick.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Okay, regarding self-inserts, and I've done that a little bit. I mean, there's one book that I keep pushing that if I said it's very autobiographical to you, so even deny it is kind of silly. Do you draw upon actual experience, or for me, honestly, it was dealing with post-traumatic stress. I put that shows up in a lot of my stories. Does that do you have something you draw from when you write your characters?
I use it as a starting point, mainly because, again, if I was doing autobiographical, it would get very boring very quickly.
Ah.
You know, most of the interesting stuff in my life happens in my head, or in Italy, but that's a different conversation. I'll tell you sometime.
Okay.
But yeah, there are autobiographical events that ended up in books. For actually, one of my problems in Italy shows up in a St. Tommy novel, book 9, which hasn't come out yet, and it's like, okay, this is too good. It has to go into the book. Or I drew upon one experience for a different character where I left high school under a bit of a cloud. There are some songs you should not make parodies about, especially showing them to your classmates. Yes.
Okay.
A little too vague, but okay.
Yeah. Oh, well, it requires a knowledge of Gilbert and Sullivan. The song title was called, yes, the original song was called I've Got a Little List. Doesn't go over well in high school. Trust me. Ask me how I know.
Okay. I know
but-
exactly what you did. Yeah,
Yeah.
that wouldn't go
Yeah.
over well.
No.
And it was in 2000, and it hadn't occurred to me at the time that it was the year anniversary of something called Columbine.
Mhm.
So I hit the jackpot there. So I used a similar incident where, gee, suddenly everybody who you thought was your friends has now abandoned you. And I use that as background for one of my characters. Things like that. A lot of characters of mine use Krav Maga, the fighting system of the Israeli military, because I've got books on it. I find it very practical. Even I can do it. And I've gone through a few levels. So I know how moves feel when they're used on you and how these moves feel when you're using it on somebody else. So yeah, the interesting parts of me go into books. The boring parts I leave out.
I have a very hard time not writing characters who have chronic nightmares. It just keeps coming up.
Look, people keep saying, write what you know.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
Okay.
We were talking about Babylon 5 earlier, and there was one, half a season where everyone in every character, wasn't sleeping well, had nightmares, one damn thing after another. Which, oh look, J. Michael Straczynski running on 4 hours of sleep every night.
Nope, there
That
you go.
sort of thing. And it was, it wound up showing up in his work. It happens.
All right. Well, we're up down to the last 10 minutes of the show, and this is usually the time when we, plug and promote and do shout outs. So the first thing I want to say is that links to Declan's Amazon page and personal website are in the description. And what would you like to direct listeners to or urge they buy?
Well, I will always urge that you buy the longest series, which is St. Tommy NYPD, and I will definitely recommend White Ops as far as space opera goes.
When's that going to come? When is that coming out?
Books 1, 2, and 3 are January, February, and March. Book 1 and 2 are facing intergalactic alien invaders, a problem on Earth with a tyrannical president. Book 3 is terrorists take over Disney Planet.
That sounds good.
That's why it's called Main Street DOA.
Nice.
Yeah. And it was very simply a matter of, there's a cultural misunderstanding about, well, your Spec Ops team has gone through 3 different wars. What would you like to do now? And the smart ass who leads them says, go to Disney Planet. It's like, that's a very good idea. You deserve a vacation. It's like, Ah, crap. But luckily, his sanity is saved and terrorists take over the planet. So he has something to do.
And for the listeners, I would urge you, if you own a Kindle, the Kindle price for the first Hellspawn, for the first title of St. Tommy NYPD, Hellspawn, is 99 cents. I mean, that's a full novel. So,
Oh yeah, and they all read smoothly. Most of them can be read individually. They do tie together, but you can probably pick it up every 3 books. Somehow they all ended up as trilogies, and I don't know why. It just goes to show that even when you outline in advance, crap still comes up on you. But no, I definitely recommend St. Tommy. Most people will tell me it's the best thing I've written. So I'm not going to argue with them. Like I said, book 9 is coming out eventually. Our printer is based in California, so it's locked down so hard. There's been a slight delay in some of the books, but like I said, book 9's coming out, goes up to book 12, and this is not one of those books where the author is never going to finish. I could drop dead tomorrow, this series will end. And it will come to a satisfactory conclusion.
Great shades of what? Wheel to Time?
Oh, Wheel of Time, Patrick Rothfuss, George Rape Martin. Pick one.
Actually, one very quick question, because I'm just curious. On average, how long does it take you to write a book?
The St. Tommy novels, I have gotten up to a book in 2 to 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, mainly because I've been doing this since I was 16, so I've got a lot of practice in. It was Orson Scott Card who once said, "The first million words are practice." And when I was first writing what became White Ops, I wrote 2,000 pages in 15 months. Now, when I say 2,000 pages, I thought, oh yeah, a book is somewhere between 350 and 400 pages. However, I learned later that pages in the book world are double spaced with 1-inch margins, not single spaced and 10-point type with smaller margins. So I don't even know how much the original collection of writings it was in terms of length, because I didn't know you kept track of this by word count. So, it's 25 years later, and I don't even think I could find the original files if I tried. That's like five computers ago.
Oh, geez. I know what
Yeah.
that's like.
Mm-hmm.
So where can people find you on the interwebs?
You can find me, declanfinn.substack, declanfinn.com. Twitter is Declan Finn Books, or at Declan Finn Books. I run a website called Upstream Reviews. I run it with a fellow author named Rob Crucy. I think that's how he pronounces his name. Upstream Reviews. I mentioned the Substack, mentioned the Twitter. I'm on MeWe and Parler and Gab and Facebook. Oh my! All of my books are on Amazon. The White Ops series is on almost everything, or soon will be, because Tuscany Bay Press decided to go wide with it. So it's Kobo and Apple Books, and I don't think it's on Google Play yet, but you get the idea. So White Ops will be everywhere, just in case you don't want to go through the evil one, Amazon. And Silver Empire Press you can buy 90% of my books through Silver Empire, silverempire.org, I think. It's one of the either Silver Empire Press or silverempire.org. And you can order direct from the publisher, so you don't have to give any money to Jeff Bezos if you don't want to, or his wife, depending on the divorce settlement. You know, so you can. I'm fairly all over the place. You can type in Declan Finn, and usually you can find me. Usually you can find me wearing a bright yellow blazer, but that's a different conversation. It's one way to stick out at conventions.
Yeah.
You know,
The Dick Tracy look.
Okay, one last question. Is there anyone at Silver Empire or Richard's Publishing House that you really think we should have on here?
Well, you've already had Richard and Russell.
Yeah, I'm trying to get Russell back.
If he has the time, he's kind of buried.
Okay.
Silver Empire does a superhero line of books. I can recommend most of them off the top of my head, but without a list in front of me, get Morgan Newquist, Russell's wife, because she came up with the concept of an expanded superhero novel universe.
You know, she's really humble because when I did interview her about that, she didn't even mention it. She did not mention she created it. And I brought her on specifically to talk about that universe.
I love her, but sometimes, anyway, so you got Morgan, Paula Ritchie, if you haven't got her already, John Mollison.
John Mollison, okay. Paula Ritchie's on the list.
Okay, Kai Wai Che or Ben Che, depending on which alias you get him under. He also writes, a type of superhero that's if the Punisher were sane, and a SWAT cop. So Kai Wai Che, John Mollison, Richard Watts is okay. He's got a lot of Doctor Strange elements versus H.P. Lovecraft monstrosities. J.D. Cowan is always good for a wide variety of conversation. I actually knew him as a book reviewer before he ever started writing.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, hell, I run a book review website. I can come up with a few people for you.
Well, I'm going to surf around your website.
Yeah, Hans Schantz, who does alternate history. He's a guy who can write alternate history, use real history, and weave it all together into a conspiracy theory that makes the Illuminati look tame. Unfortunately, the conspiracy theory he puts together looks too plausible, so it's a little scary. So Hans is part of Silver Empire as well, and I'm probably going to wind up losing some people.
Well, that's okay. No, you've given us plenty of people for me to contact.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But okay.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Declan, for joining us this evening. It has definitely been a pleasure speaking with you. And thank you, everyone who has joined us. Please go check him out. Check out his books on Amazon and all the other websites if you don't want Amazon. And we will definitely see you all next week.
Good night.